When I was getting ready to leave RCA, it was really very heartfelt for me because that was my family. They had taught me from nothing. They taught me from scratch how to be, as I would describe in part 4, a line producer. I learned so much there. I had deep affection for the people there. And yet none of my records were being promoted, and we needed to do something about that. The deal was that RCA really did not do payola, and thus records like Raisin in the Grass, that happened because of Pat McMahon in Phoenix, who took a chance on it. Going in Circles was a fluke in that it was flipped from the B-side and got play as an A-side. Willie Hutch was never promoted. A couple of acts I was asked to sign didn't get promoted. So when a group came in the door at RCA by the name of Five Flights Up, I was enchanted and I wanted them. I just didn't want to give them to RCA because RCA wasn't doing anything for me anymore. That was, I believe, what's the right word for this? That was an ethical dilemma, and one I chose poorly on. In retrospect, I wish I had signed them to RCA. I found them while I was at RCA. They belonged to RCA. But instead, I kept them. I took Charlene Gibson, who was the lead singer for the Friends of Distinction's remarkable hit, Lover Let Me Be Lonely, and a group called Sound 70 that was produced and created by Clarence McDonald, the Friends of Distinction's former vocal arranger. I took all 3 acts, and my wife and I threw a huge party for the record industry at the RCA studios. Also kind of a slam in the face to RCA, which I never even considered at the time. I was young, I was naive, and boy do I have a lot to make amends for. Villa Capri, the Italian restaurant in Hollywood, catered the event, and all 3 acts performed with full orchestra. Just amazing. And Five Flights Up sang what would be their first hit, Do What You Want to Do, to full orchestra. It was beautiful. When my attorney dropped the ball on all 3 deals that were offered, I just thought it was over for me. I was looking for work. I was told to get a manager, and the manager that was suggested tried to get me a job at Capitol Records for $30,000 a year and a 2% royalty, and he wasn't able to do it. My office mate at RCA, who was leaving, Rick Gerard, said that Bell Records was paying excellent money and perhaps I would like to go staff there. More about that in a minute. The first group I produced as an independent upon leaving RCA was a group called The Establishment. 8 singers, lead singer Larry Meredith, fabulous singer, and it was for a small label in the South. It was called In My Heart I Am a Free Man, and it was not promoted, but the arranger for the group was Darnell Pershing, who soon became my best friend and my arranger for several years after that. The next group I produced was Sisters Love, a group signed to A&M, 3 black lady singers, all of them excellent, and I produced a song called I Just Want to Be Me. The lead singer on that cut sang the most exciting vocal performance I have ever been witness to in my days in the control room. It was exceptional. But that record too was not promoted. Last but not least, Eddie Rosenblatt signed Five Flights Up to Talent Associates. We had one pretty good size hit, Do What You Want to Do, followed by a couple not so big hits, but still chart makers, called After the Feeling Was Gone and Like Monday Follows Sunday. I also produced a 17-year-old singer for Eddie Rosenblatt at Talent Associates by the name of Linda Seals. And what a voice. However, her stuff wasn't being promoted. The first thing I did was cut 6/8 ballads, and the label didn't like that. So then I went in and cut 3 oldies, and the label didn't like that. Bell Records was our distributor at the time for Talent Associates, and they were tough on me with her. So finally, I recorded Angel of the Morning, a remake of the old hit from Jackie DeShannon of several years prior, and it sparkled. So I got a call from Bell Records saying that the president of Bell Records was in town and that he wanted to hear Angel of the Morning, and he wanted to hear this other act that Gabriel Meckler, Three Dog Night's producer, had produced, The singer's name was Bobby Bruce. That's all I remember. So I went to the meeting. I listened to Bobby's record, Bobby Bruce, and it was awful. I'm sorry, Gabriel, but I didn't like it. And Angel of the Morning just sparkled. So I went home, called Linda Seals, and said, I think we're going to really get something done on this record. And within an hour or two, the president of Bell, Larry Utah, called me and said, we've decided to drop our distribution deal for Talent Associates, so we're going to pick Bobby Bruce instead of Linda Seals because we are not going to promote Talent Associates anymore. The contract is over. So I had to call Linda back and tell her that, for the most part, we were done. Her entire album was on the shelf, as was the album by Five Flights Up. Nothing at Talent Associates ever happened or was promoted properly since Eddie Rosenblatt left that label. I didn't know it at the time, but he was critical to my success, both then and later. So I was beginning to get a little desperate. Carol and I had spent all that money on a showcase, and all we had was a hit and a couple of partial hits with Five Flights Up, and money was running out. So I went to see Larry Utah at Bell and apologized to him for producing Linda Seals. And I said, would you please hire me, Larry, and don't hold it against me that I produced an act that you didn't like. That happens all the time, so can we just move on? Well, we did. We moved on, and he signed me because I apologized for producing Linda Seals, an artist I believed in. Rick Gerard, my office mate, producer at RCA, also went to Bell, but he went as an independent, which was really smart, and he was still having trouble peddling his Michael McDonald masters because Michael McDonald, soon to be with the Doobies, was unknown, and Rick couldn't place them. Nobody seemed to want to purchase Michael McDonald. Oh well. So I went to Bell as staff, and it turns out at Bell that I thought I would be doing some remarkable things, but the first thing John Rossica, my boss, told me when I got there was, John, we have no payola budget for black artists, so you can't do black artists while you're here. Well, shoot. Let me see. Friends of Distinction, Willie Hutch, Five Flights Up, Linda Seals, Sisters Love, and that was fine. I mean, it was fine, but I had 0 hits, and this was really going to be interesting because here I was making $36,000. That's more than I was asking for from Capitol, and a 3% royalty, which is more than I was asking for from Capitol. And the 3%, what, 0.8% at RCA and now 3%? But it means nothing if you don't have hits, because in the record business, you're only as hot as your latest hit. So I hadn't had one. And what we will talk about later on in another chapter is Don Berkheimer, my mentor at RCA, calling me one day and basically chiding me. And he said, John, how's it going on your big contract over there? Which in those days was pretty good money. He said, how are the hits coming? And I said, oh, Don, what do you want? And Don said, I have an act I think I might like to sign, but I'm only going to sign them if you're interested in producing them. And I said, okay, what kind of act? Well, pop black vocal group. Hello. Music to my ears. And I said, what's their name? And he said, the Hughes Corporation, and they've got this song, Rock the Boat. More on that later. Before Don had called, Motown called and asked me to come staff for them, and I thought, oh my, this is perfect. Finally, I'll get to do my thing. And we negotiated the contracts. Cooper and Hurwitz, Jay Cooper and Chuck Hurwitz negotiated my contract. I signed it. I went to Suzanne DePass's office at Motown. We toasted my signing over some Courvoisier. It was just a remarkable time. I was thrilled. A gentleman by the name of Bob Cullen, who was a white Motown executive, had brought me in to go to work for them. So I drove home that night, told my wife Carol that I'd be working for Motown shortly, so we prepared for our next life chapter. A day or two later, the phone rang, and it was my attorney, Jay Cooper, saying, Bob Cullen, who hired you at Motown, has been fired, and apparently Motown doesn't want any of his people coming in, so your contract is null and void. So in fact, I had a fully signed contract from my end and an informal handshake that they were signing their end from Suzanne DePass. But in fact, I had no deal, and I was out something like $4,000 worth of legal fees at a time when I most needed money. And that's when the Bell Records staff offer came along. Thank you so much. Final postscript. Willie Hutch, my RCA artist, was still at RCA, and he pulled me aside and said, "John, you were given the biggest favor and you don't know it." He said, "Motown is too tough for you." And I said, I beg your pardon? And he said, "It is a really cutthroat street environment and you are too soft to be there. You were given a blessing by that contract falling through." And he was right. Also, when I went to Bell Records, within my first year, one day the receptionist came up and was crying and threw her arms around me and gave me this big, non-romantic, just very inspired hug. And I said, "What is wrong?" And she said, "I just don't know how you are surviving in this business. You are such a gentle soul. It breaks my heart." Isn't that interesting? I thought at the time, what's she talking about? I'm doing just fine, thank you very much, but I sure could use a hit. And thank you, Don Berkheimer, for calling and offering me the Hughes Corporation.